In today's tutorial, we're going to make a waterfall card. This card was given its name because of the way the stamped images cascade when you pull the tab downward. Thus, the waterfall card. These cards are fun and easy to make. Let me show you how. The base of my card is a piece of 8.5 by 11 cardstock cut in half, so it's now 8.5 by 5.5, and then scored along the side to give it a nice sharp crease. Then we're going to layer on top of that some Whisper White and some of the Tall Tales Designer Series paper that matches this cardstock nicely. By doing it this way, we get a little bit more stability because it's got a few more layers on it. I'm just going to add our greeting before we go any further. So just take the word window punch, line it up with the polka dots to make sure that it's even. And then by putting it on top of our white cardstock, we'll know exactly where we need to stamp that greeting. And I'm using the Pocket Silhouette stamp set. This greeting will say friend to friend. And there we go. Now we're just going to put all of this aside for a moment and work on layering our cascading pieces. I've cut a piece of crushed curry cardstock that's 8 inches long, 1.5 inches wide. I chose this piece for the cardstock because our finished stamped images will be 1.5 inches wide, so they'll fit on there. If your image is larger, you're going to have to adjust this piece accordingly so that you have the right width for your project. I'm going to take and score first at 1.5 inches because our stamped images are 1.5 inches wide, and then move up by 3/4 of an inch. So go to 2.25, 3, and 3.25 for our score lines. Then you want to just take and make sure that you work those scored pieces a little bit so that they'll cascade easily. We're going to just take this piece of Tall Tales DSP that's been adhered to the white, and we're going to work on a base of the cascade now. So what we want to do is, knowing that this piece here is going to fit underneath there, we want to just put it onto our card front, making sure that it's not going to be too high or too low. So we're just going to take it, make sure that it'll fit just like that, and use a couple of brads to hold this. We want to use more than just adhesive because the workings of the cascade can be really hard on this cardstock if it's not really securely put down. Using some white brads from the Neutrals assortment, we're going to take and anchor this base into place. You can see how fast and easily this card is coming together. So already we've got most of the card front completed, and we're just going to go ahead and put that cascade into place. So now that we can just put this piece together again, what you need to remember is that there's a longer tail and a shorter tail on this piece. The longer tail will go underneath the band. The shorter tail will go on top of the band. And we'll just use a little bit of sticky strip underneath it to put it all into place and just even it out before we adhere it down. You need to remember just to put the sticky strip right at the bottom of this piece because you don't want it sticking to the rest of the card. We only want it adhering to this band. So again, the long tail goes underneath, the shorter tail goes on top. Just make sure that it's all evened out and then adhere it down. So as I said, the images we're going to use are going to be based on 1.5 by 1.5 pieces of cardstock that I've pre-cut, and we will be adhering these underneath each score line. So you can see that there's the score lines that we made. Each of these pieces is going to go right underneath one of the score lines. It's important that you don't put it right onto the score line because it won't cascade as nicely, but if you put it just underneath those lines, you're good to go. I'm going to continue to use the Pocket Silhouettes cards for our stamped images. So just take each of the images, stamp it in the crushed curry, and then use your 1 3/8 square punch, turning it over so you can see where the image is. Just center the image and punch it out. Then we're going to take and adhere each of those images onto a piece of the 1.5 inch square cardstock. So we can just go ahead now and finish assembling our card. So we're going to use our snail and apply some adhesive to the back. For the first piece, you want to cover the entire back because it's got a large surface that it wants to cover here. For the next piece, though, we'll put adhesive only along the top because you don't have as much surface to cover, and that'll go right underneath the score line. Continuing with each piece until your card is completed. And already now we've done our waterfall. We're just going to do a little bit more embellishing and this card will be good to go. So we're going to stick it onto our card already. And then we're just going to make a tail for this card using some ribbon so the recipient of this card knows exactly where they need to pull. So just to help us work with it, we're going to pull the tail down a little bit. I've punched out a white circle. I'm going to put a little bit of adhesive into that white circle and attach it to the bottom of this card and just wrapping it around. Then taking the crocodile, I'm going to punch a hole into this tail so that we can add some ribbon. And I love this new crushed curry polka dot ribbon, which is what we're going to use to finish this card. To keep this card really simple, I'm just going to take and put my ribbon through, not do anything fancy with it other than just tie it into a single knot, making sure that those polka dots are front and center when we tie this ribbon. So there you go. We can just trim the edges and we've got our finished card. So put it back to the top and here we go. Waterfall cards. If you have any questions, please email me. I'd be happy to help.